everyone, and welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're gonna make one of my favorite things to make. This is actually a bag design. It's the whole reason I started the OklaRoots YouTube channel. Today, we're gonna make the Bee Hip 2.0 from Sewfisticated Craft Designs, and this is a fanny pack. You guys, I love a fanny pack. I do. I love a good fanny pack. It's gotta be the right shape. It can't be flat. It's gotta be three-dimensional. It's gotta have a bit of structure, but not too much structure. And this might be the most perfect fanny pack pattern I have tried yet. And I have tried so many versions of the fanny pack. So this is the size small. The pattern is available in 3 sizes. You can buy them individually or you can buy a bundle of all 3. I highly encourage you, if you like to wear these types of bags, I highly encourage you to get the set of 3, okay? Because I'm gonna show you the medium today. I have not made the large yet, but I want to. This is a really good pattern, guys. This is a size small, and I feel like it's a good, normal size fanny pack. Like, it's not a jumbo fanny, but it's still gonna fits my wallet, your cell phone, things like that. So let's just go through how awesome this pattern is. Okay, I want to warn you too, there are a lot of options with this pattern. Sewfisticated Craft Designs is so great about offering you a lot of different options. But you're going to want to go through the first few pages and really focus on what you want to make, and make sure you only cut out pattern pieces for that. You don't need to cut out everything in this pattern, okay? So for mine, I'm just doing the full front panel. There are a couple options for the front panel. You can have like a smaller centered design. You could have a second zipper pocket here. I'm just doing the basic full front, which I think is so cute. And then you see I have the contrasting little wings on the side. On the back, we have a full panel on the back, and then there is a zipper pocket that's like a little slip pocket. This is a great pocket to put your ID, your passport, cash, things like that, because this will most likely be right against your body, right? So then we're gonna open up the flap, ba-bam, and on the inside we have a slip pocket. There is an option to make this a card slot slip pocket. I know, amazing. And then it has a zipper pocket, and then on the curved part of the fanny pack, we have 3 little slip mesh pockets, which is so stinking adorable. The pattern also includes 3 different carrying styles. So I'm doing the D-ring with crossbody strap style. You could also do a strap that is sewn into the wings instead of the D-ring situation here. You could also do one that is grommeted into the wings like that. I really like the look of this because I like having lots of options and ways to wear this bag, and I'm gonna show you that. Let me just show you. Okay, so first of all, classic way to wear a fanny pack. I'm gonna tighten it all the way up, but I'm not sure. I think it's gonna be a little too big for me. Well, let's go with this one first, since I already have it like this. So here's a great way to wear a fanny pack. This is a very popular way. It's kind of like a crossbody bag, but it's like right against your chest. This makes it really easy to access everything, especially if you're a mom and you got little kids and you're trying to keep hold of all the things. This is really convenient. This isn't like whacking people when you're walking down the airport, you know, the plane, the center aisle. You know what I'm talking about, when you start whacking people on the head on their seats. It's happened a lot. This is a really convenient way to hold everything right here. Now, the traditional way would be around, if you guys see me, would be around your waist like this. Now, I would have to make this strap significantly smaller. So that's one thing to think about when you're making this bag, is how do you want to wear it? Because regardless of your body type and your size, wearing it around your waist is going to require a bit of a smaller strap rather than wearing it as a purse, which is what I'm going to show you now. So that's what I like about having the D-rings and the swivel hooks, is I can just unclick it and I can lengthen this strap. And now another way to wear it as a crossbody is like this. So do you see how it just hangs on my hip like a crossbody bag? It's just a regular bag, and it's like a purse. It's like a crossbody purse that's shaped like a fanny pack, and it looks so stinking cute. And you could shorten it. I just love this bag, and you could just wear it as a regular shoulder bag, which is really cute. This is a great multi-purpose bag, because I know a lot of people are like, it's not the 80s, it's not the 90s, why do we need a fanny pack? Fanny packs are good all the time, and there's so many different ways you can wear them. So thank you so much to Sewfisticated Craft Designs for allowing me to use your patterns on my YouTube channel. If you haven't checked out their site, you gotta go over there. I'll tell you, some of my most used bags are from Sewfisticated Craft Designs. They have amazing beginner, kind of smaller wallet, which we've done on the channel. We've done quite a few of their patterns on the channel. They have a travel bag that we used in a bag making bee box that I use every single time I travel. My mom uses it, I use it, Gabby from Underground Fabrics uses it. We all use this bag every single time we travel. So These are patterns that are written so well, even though they can be a little, like the idea can be complicated. I'll tell you, fanny pack patterns are not easy to write. They're not easy to explain. It has a lot of, it's not a flat project. It gets a little confusing, and this pattern explained every step so well. So please go check out their site and check out their patterns. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Make sure you turn on your notifications button as well. Maybe it's over here actually. It's like a little bell. Just turn on the notifications so that way you'll be notified every time we have a video. Things are gonna start changing around here. We're gonna have all kinds of different content, maybe different days of the week. It's gonna get a little wild on the OklaRoots YouTube channel, so if you don't wanna miss anything, make sure you turn on notifications. If you have any suggestions for other patterns, or you just wanna give a shout out, leave it down in the comment section down below. All right, guys, we're gonna make the medium one today. Let's get started. Okay, so today we're gonna make the medium size. So for the medium size, you're gonna need about a fat quarter of exterior material. You really don't have a lot of exterior material. Now, if you're using a directional print or you want a fussy cut, that size might change a bit. I'm actually gonna use these two pieces for the exterior. So just like the first one I made, I really like contrast. So the main print is gonna be this beautiful castle, and then the sides and the tops and stuff will be this nice solid. Just like I did on the first one, I am using a nylon material. Now, when I say a bonded nylon material, this is a material, it's called a lot of different things depending on what shop you get it from. I'll have links down below to help you find this stuff. But you can see it has a nylon, it's nylon texture. It's a polyester nylon material on the front. Very easy to keep clean, very easy to wipe down. On the back, it has almost like an interfacing. So it has a sturdiness to it. It does not stretch, it does not do anything, it does not fray. It is a great, sturdy, solid material that is less dense and less difficult to work with than vinyl. So if you're not comfortable with vinyl, but you want more than quilt cotton, this is the type of stuff to try out. For the lining, you're gonna need a ½ yard of material, and I'm gonna be using a waterproof canvas for that. So you can use a waterproof canvas or a water resistant canvas. I will tell you the difference between those two is kind of the thickness. So a water resistant canvas is usually a lot more lightweight. A waterproof canvas is a little bit more bulky, a little bit sturdier. And because I'm not using any stabilizer to make the structure for this bag, I wanna make sure my material is what's gonna hold its own today. So that's why I'm using this. Okay, so your interfacing stabilizer, that is totally optional. It's gonna be dependent on what you're using. If you're using the vinyl for your exterior, I don't think you need any stabilizer and definitely no interfacing. If you're using quilt cotton anywhere, you're gonna wanna use woven interfacing, and you're probably gonna also wanna use something like a Decoville Light. Now this is like an adhesive foam, and I am only using this on the base of the bag, and that's purely because I just want the base to be a little bit sturdy so that when I put things in it, I don't have a saggy bottom. However, depending on your material, it's completely optional. For larger sizes, you might want to start looking into Decoville Light. You might want to look into this like foam. You know, it's a thin foam. It's not like sewing foam. Something like that, fusible fleece, just to add structure, because the bigger the bag is, the more space the fabric takes up and the more likely it's going to kind of lose its shape. The smaller the bag, the less likely you're going to need anything like this. But if you are going to use something like this, you need about a fat quarter of it. And then I have the mesh. The mesh is going to be just a small cut, about 15 inches by 4 inches of mesh. I like using the mesh from Fanny, but wherever you get it, just make sure it's kind of a easy to work with one, nothing crazy, nothing too thick, nothing wiry, nothing like that. Okay, here are the other items. Next we have binding or bias tape, whatever you like to use to cover the seams. I like using this pre-cut on a roll 1 inch wide water resistant canvas binding. It's one of my favorite things to use. I also really love elastic. So if you have the option to use elastic, Fanny sells it. It's a little bit less than 1 inch, but you can also buy it 1 inch thick. I've gotten mine before from Wonderground Fabrics. You can also find it at Saya Swag. Elastic is great. Now, on this pattern, we have sharp corners, so elastic is going to fold no matter what. If it was just rounded corners, I would definitely use just elastic, but I don't have a lot of elastic color options, so that's why I'm using this today. Whatever your preference is for binding, but this is mine. So then I have some webbing here. This is going to be for the strap. Now I'm using 1 inch wide webbing. You could also use 1.5 inch wide webbing, whatever is your preference. Again, this bag is going to be a medium size, and it's not a small medium, it's kind of a larger medium, I'm assuming. But your strap length is just gonna be based on how you wanna wear it. If you're gonna wear it more as a fanny pack, 30 inches, 35 inches, that's probably going to be enough. If you want to wear it as a crossbody, I would say go for the 54-inch long strap, you know, because you want it to have the length to go down by your hip. Then I have my zipper tape here. The amount of zipper tape you need is going to depend on how many zippers you're doing. I'm only doing 3 zippers today, so really I only need about 34 inches of zipper tape because I'm going to cut that into 3 different zippers. Next, I have my zipper pulls. These are all number 5, so number 5 zipper tape, number 5 zipper pulls. And then I have my hardware to go with my strap. I have 2 D-rings, both are 1 inch wide, and then I have 2 swivel hooks and a slider, all 1 inch wide. And again, that's just because of the choice I made for my strap. You can sew in a strap, so you don't have to have the D-rings. You could take that out and just have a sewn-in strap, or you could use the little plastic hooks that, you know, kind of like the traditional fanny pack, or you can use metal clips. I forgot what those things are called, but there's a lot of options for closures here, but I really like the look of like that crossbody strap with the fanny pack. I think that that combination is really lovely. And then of course my bag tags, I always forget to mention these. I have a sew-on bag tag that is a cork raw edge material that's really nice. I'm gonna put that on the exterior of the bag. And then I have a fun little woven tag here. You can see it opens up like this. And I think I'm gonna sew this into the mesh pocket. I think I just like a little pop of OklaRoots on the inside as well, because why not? Okay, here's most of the other stuff. I have a rivet press and a hole punch. That's just because I'm gonna use rivets on my strap. Totally optional, you don't have to, you can sew them, but I just have a couple of small rivets here to make making the strap quick and easy. My thread today is going to be a Tex 45 weight thread. This is color Dusty Rose and it's from Wizardry Stitchery. That goes through the needle. In the bobbin though, I have a polyester Gutermann thread. This is some thread I get from Joann's. The needle I like to use with all of this is a Microtex 8012. I have snips at the sewing machine with me at all times and a stiletto as well. This is a new ruler that's coming to Shop OklaRoots pretty soon. It's a 3-inch by 6-inch ruler, just a little bit easier sometimes to work with for bigger projects rather than the 1-inch by 6-inch ruler. Both are great though. Then I have my inner seam tool. This is really helpful at tracing out stabilizer that needs to be smaller than the pattern pieces. I have a lighter for cleaning up any loose threads, double-sided tape as always, a seam ripper, as always. And then I have this. This is my turning tool. It's called a turning wand. It's in Shop OklaRoots. It's just fun. It's pretty. It's rainbow. And it's helpful at poking out those corners without, you know, poking a hole in anything. And then finally I have 2 marking tools, an erasing marker and a silver ink pen. I go between these depending on how dark the fabric is or what kind of material I'm using. So before we get started, I just want to make sure you look at the page of the pattern that shows you all the different styles. And what you want to do is mark which pattern pieces you need, okay? There are a lot of pattern pieces. You don't need to cut them all out. You don't need them all. So this can be a little overwhelming when you're just getting started. So my suggestion is for the medium pattern, at least the instructions, start at page 5, okay? On page 5, it's going to walk you through everything. Whether you're gonna do a full panel, which is what I'm doing for the front of the bag, whether you're gonna do a zipper pocket on the front of the bag, whether you're gonna fussy cut something on the front of the bag, go through each of those 3 options and it lists which pattern pieces you need for each one of those. So mark those, cut those pattern pieces out because you don't need the other ones. I don't need pattern pieces for the zipper pocket front panel because I'm not making that, right? So take your time to just mark the pattern pieces you need. And once you have that done, go through the pocket options as well. There's the card slot pocket and the slip pocket option. Just do that, and then same thing with the carrying styles. Are you gonna use a grommet? Are you gonna sew in your strap? Are you gonna do what I'm doing with the D-rings? The pattern is laid out very, very neatly in those first few pages, so all you have to do is find the pieces that it tells you and cut those out, and you don't have to cut the rest out. Let's go through the pattern pieces I'm using today. First, this is pattern piece A. This is gonna be for the front main panel. I'm not doing a fussy cutting, I'm not doing a zipper, I'm keeping it super simple, so I just have 1 large rectangle for that. I will add my bag tag to this pattern piece. Next, I have pattern piece A1, and this is going to be for the lining of the inside of the bag. Then we have pattern piece A3. This is for the front mesh pocket. This mesh pocket is totally optional. If you don't have mesh or you don't want to do a mesh pocket, just skip it. You don't need a pocket there, but it is really, really cute. Next, we have our wings, and I just want to show you. You have 1 pattern piece here that has both wings. So you can cut down this dash line in the center. I just folded along it, and you're going to cut 1 exterior like this and 1 exterior like this. Then you're going to cut 2 linings like this and 2 linings like this. So remember, it's important that everything is mirrored. You have 2 exterior cuts that are mirrored, and then 2 sets of lining cuts that are mirrored. So you should have a total of 6 cuts of material here. Next up are our flap and base. So think about this ahead of time if you don't want them to be the same. One of these cuts from pattern piece B, B1, B2, BB, BB1, BB2. There's a lot of pieces here. You're gonna have one cut of exterior for the top, which is the flap, one cut of exterior for the bottom, which is the base. Same thing with the lining, one cut of lining. So if you have pattern placement, if you have some fun thing, some embroidery design you want on the top flap that when you look down you see it, think about that, organize it. And then I have one cut of stabilizer that is smaller than the exterior by 3/8 of an inch. And to make that, I just used the pattern piece as it was, and then I used my little inner seam tool here, and I found the 3/8 of an inch mark on the curve, and I just traced along the edge after I traced out the pattern piece on my stabilizer. So I traced the pattern piece on my stabilizer, like full size, and then I just traced inside of it to make that nice 3/8 of an inch curve all the way around, and then I cut out that inner piece. So you can see this is not gonna get in my seam allowance, but I'm only putting this on the base. If you wanna put it on the flap as well, you can make 2 of them, that's fine, but I'm only doing it on the base. Next we have pattern piece D. This is gonna be the exterior back part, and you have a little cutout on the top for the zipper pocket. Then you're gonna have 2 cuts of lining material from pattern piece D1, and remember this is a template cut, so it's not just a rectangle. And this is going to be for the zipper pocket on the back of your exterior. Next up is pattern piece E, which is going to be the interior panel lining. E1 is going to be the zipper pocket lining. This is for the zipper pocket on the inside of the bag. And cut E2 is going to be for the slip pocket that kind of overlays that zipper pocket on the inside of the bag. And finally, we have pattern piece F, which is going to be the side connector tab. You're just gonna have 1 cut of this, and this is only if you're using the D-rings like I am. So first things first, let's do our bag tag. Now, I typically do it right in the center, but I think this time I'm gonna do it more towards the corner. And the pattern suggests that you go 2 inches away from all corners. So I'm just gonna measure 2 inches from the right and 2 inches from the bottom. And I'm gonna put my bag tag just like that. I think that's gonna look really nice. So I'm just gonna grab some double-sided tape and add it to the back of my tag to help keep it in place. There we go. And once I have that in place, I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna top stitch along all 4 edges of my bag tag at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm leaving the tails of the beginning and the end of the stitching for the bobbin and the top thread long, so I can just pull them all to the back and tie them off to get a nice finished clean look without any back stitching. Yeah, that looks so pretty, doesn't it? And so when you look at it, I don't know if you can see because it's kind of far away, but you cannot really see where the stitching starts and stops, which is great because I just pulled all the threads to the back and there's a little knot back here. I just tied them in 3 knots. I love that look, so pretty. Okay, so now let's work on this mesh pocket. Again, totally optional. If you don't want to do it, go ahead and skip it. But you're gonna need panel piece A1, which is your main zipper pocket lining, and then you're gonna need pattern piece A3, which is the mesh, and then you're gonna need some bias tape, like this, and double-sided tape is also very helpful here. So let's separate the lining panel and just focus on the mesh, and I'm gonna take my bias tape and I'm just going to lay it so that it's a bit longer than my mesh pocket. And if you wanted to use elastic for this mesh pocket, you definitely could. And I'm just gonna fold this binding in half, long sides together, wrong sides together. All right, then I'm gonna open it up and I'm gonna take some of my double-sided tape and I'm just gonna run it right along the center of one of those halves. So centered between the fold and the raw edge, not right on either one of those. Just right down the middle of half of one side. And then you can take the paper off the tape and then grab your mesh and lay your mesh over the tape so the top edge of your mesh lines up with that midpoint fold. So remember we folded in half, you should have a midpoint mark there. Just line this up and try not to stretch the mesh too much as you do this. I know it's hard not to because it's stretchy, but just do your best to not stretch it. There you go. And then because it's mesh, we can actually just fold this back down. And depending on your material, it can just hold it. Double-sided tape doesn't work great with water-resistant canvas. So I'm also gonna grab my clips, which I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video, but I love these plastic clover clips. And I'm just gonna clip the binding in place. Okay, now I'm gonna measure about 4 inches over from the right side. And that's where I'm gonna install my little woven tag. So I want the left side of it to be 4 inches in because we're gonna sew this down later. It doesn't have to be precise. You just don't want this to be in a stitch later. So I'm just gonna tuck it under the binding like that and clip it in place. Isn't that cute? So now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna top stitch right along the bottom raw edge of my binding at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do like to back stitch at the beginning and the end, and make sure if you have a woven tag that you are going over the end of the woven tag. Don't let it fall out of place or anything. So once that's sewn on, grab your main lining panel and lay it right side up, and then take your mesh and lay it right side up over the lining panel. And it should match up with the bottom corners. You might notice that your mesh sometimes twists. I know, it just does. Don't worry about it. The thing about mesh is that it's very flexible, so you can just pull it right back up and move it exactly where you need it. And if it's a little rumply, that's totally okay. Actually, it's kind of preferred for it to be a little bubbly, because that means that it will kind of poke up, kind of pop up a bit when it's in the pocket. And you don't want this to be super flat against the pocket. You know, you want to be able to get your hand in there and move it around. So I'm just going to line up all the edges. You notice my binding does overhang the edge. That's fine. I'll cut that off later. Okay. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to baste along the sides and the bottom at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this mesh pocket in place. If it starts moving around on you, just use your stiletto or your fingers to just get the mesh pieces back in place. It's totally okay. If it stretches, if it's pushed together, you don't have to be really particular about this. All right, so now using your ruler, measure in 4 3/4 of an inch in from the sides and draw a line. So you can see my line is just like this. If you have kind of a poochie pocket like I do, just make sure you kind of think about where this is and move everything where it's supposed to go. And now we're going to start at the bottom edge of your lining pocket and just sew right up that line and then right back down. If you want to separate the two lines by like 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch, you can do that. I kind of just go over the same line over twice. You just want to make sure this line is very sturdy, because you will be, you know, pulling on it when you're using it, so it needs to have that double row of stitching. So do that for both of your marked lines. And there you go. Isn't that cute? And the cool thing about this too is when it's laying flat like this, it might be kind of like, I don't know, but remember, it's not going to be flat in the bag. It's going to be curved like this. So these 3 pockets make a lot more sense when you think about it like that. I just love how stinking cute that is. Okay, I'm going to just trim off the overhang of my binding so I don't get confused by that later. Okay, so now you need that lining panel, your front exterior panel, your zipper Z1, and the zipper pull. I'm not adding the zipper pull because we are actually going to separate the zipper tape to construct this bag. For those of you guys who don't like that, trust me, it is the best way to do this. You are going to be so happy doing it this way. So if you haven't practiced putting zippers on zipper tapes, go ahead and get some practice in and then do this, because you're going to need it. It's going to be good. Okay, so grab your lining main panel and lay it right side up, and keep your zipper together. So nothing has been separated, but the zipper pull is not on it. So with lining right side up and then zipper tape right side up, line up the top edge of your zipper tape on the top edge of your lining, and then just use some clips to hold these together. And now we're going to go baste along this top clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that basted, grab your exterior front panel and lay it right side down. Line up the sides of the exterior panel with the sides of the lining, and then clip it to that top edge where the zipper is. So again, the zipper is overextending on both sides, so we're not lining anything up with the edges of the zipper, only the top edge of your lining panel and then the side edges of your lining panel. All right, once you have these clipped together, we're going to sew along this top clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. Make sure you're using a zipper foot for this. Once you have that done, you can pull the zipper and the lining away from the exterior at the corners and just gently cut off the corner of the exterior material, only the exterior material, at a 45-degree angle. This is going to help prevent bulk, and it's especially good if you're using like a vinyl. Now I'm going to start with the lining side. I'm going to press the lining right side up, and I'm going to give it a good finger press right along that seam. Because of the material I'm using, this works really well. If you're using a quilt cotton, or even if you're using a water-resistant canvas or waterproof canvas, you can iron the right side of it and do the same thing, but I just like to use my fingers. And then I'm going to kind of pull down my exterior panel. Now, bonded nylon doesn't crease easily, so what I like to do is just clip the sides and the bottom of these 2 panels, wrong sides together, and then I just kind of pull the material away from the zipper to get a nice flat seam. So just add clips along all the long edges Remember, the two panels are wrong sides together. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of pull the zipper and the material away from each other and finger press to get it nice and straight. My goal is for the zipper to not be too wobbly. So once you have it nice and flattened out, we're going to top stitch right along the edge by the zipper tape at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're going to baste along the two short edges and the bottom long edge also at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just to hold everything together. Okay, so this is what it should look like now. Remember, my zipper still does not have the pull on it. The lining is on the side, the exterior is on the side. Don't trim anything down yet. Keep the zipper tape as is. But you can set this to the side for just a moment. So now we're going to work on the flap, and before we get started, I'm going to mark some midpoints. So I'm going to mark the midpoint on both the lining and the exterior along the long straight edge, and then also on the curved edge. And I'm just using scissors to mark this, but if you prefer to use a pen, you can use that. That's fine. I just like scissors because I can see it on both sides and it doesn't disappear on me. Okay, now grab your main front panel and let's fold this in half and let's mark the midpoint on the zipper tape. So when you're doing that, don't worry about the edges of the zipper tape. Worry about the sides of your main panel and then fold along that top edge. And for this, I am going to use a silver ink pen just because I don't really want to cut into the zipper tape right now. You can, you just have to make sure you melt it, but I'm just going to use an ink pen for now. Okay, so once you have the midpoint marked on the zipper tape, grab a ruler and you're going to also mark the ends of the main panel on that top edge of your zipper tape. So I'm just using a ruler to line it up with the right side of my material, and I'm going to use my pen to mark where that material is. So if the material were to extend up, this is where it would go. I'm going to do this on the other side as well. So now my top edge of my zipper tape has 3 marks, one on each end and one in the middle. So once you have those 3 marks made, now you can separate the zipper tape. Okay, I know this can be a little scary. That's okay, you got it. So then grab your lining flap panel and lay it right side up. Grab your zipper tape that you just pulled off and lay it right side up. Match up the midpoint mark on the edge of the zipper tape with the midpoint mark on the curved edge of your flap and clip these together. Remember, they're both right sides up. And then let's go to the left side. Take the left end of your zipper tape and pull it up to the left top corner of your flap, and that mark you made on the edge of your zipper tape is going to line up with the corner of your flap and then clip together. Do the same thing on the right side. The corner of the lining of the flap matches up with that mark on your zipper tape. And once you have those 3 areas put together, we can flip this upside down so we're looking at the wrong side of the flap and just gently tuck it in, letting the zipper tape wrap all around this curve. It shouldn't be difficult. There shouldn't be a whole lot of bunching or anything. It really does just fit perfectly. The zipper tape fits perfectly with this curve. So just be gentle. And I always find it's easier to do this with the flap wrong side up, making kind of a bowl shape. Okay, this is what it should look like. Remember, lining, zipper right side up. You shouldn't have to clip into your zipper. This is not like a gusset that needs to spread. We don't want the zipper to spread. We want the zipper to stay this shape. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to baste along the raw edge here. And you can do this with the zipper side up or the lining wrong side up, whichever one is easier for you. The pattern suggests you do it with the lining wrong side up. That's what I did on the first bag, so that's what I'm going to do this time. You just have to be a little careful because the zipper does want to slip out of place. So use a stiletto, go slow, use a zipper foot, and baste this on at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So you see how nice that is? You shouldn't have any puckering or any pleating, anything like that. It should be nice and smooth. So now with the lining panel right side up and the zipper right side up, grab your exterior part of your flap and lay it right side down. So lining panel and exterior right sides together, and we're just going to sandwich that zipper right in between them. So I like to match up the midpoint marks and the corners first, and then I'm just going to smush down that zipper tape and clip along the entire rounded edge of the flap. You don't have to worry about the straight edge. We're not sewing that. We're only sewing where the zipper is. All right, once you have this all clipped together, we're gonna sew around that rounded clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end, and you're using a zipper foot here. Okay, now if you'd like, you can take some scissors and only on the exterior material side, just cut little slits into the seam You're not cutting the thread, you're just getting kind of close to it. And this just helps the material kind of fold over itself so that it can create a nice round shape. You don't have any like little bubbles. But again, you're not cutting the zipper tape, only the exterior material, and you're not cutting the threads either. You're just cutting the material, not your stitching. And you can do these as close together or as far apart as you want. I kind of make them more far apart to begin with, and then when I turn it out, if I feel like I need to get some bits more smooth, then I'll go back and cut into those. Okay, now take your flap and push it so it's right side out. Push out the zipper. And this is where if you have like a turning tool, you can kind of just go in here and run it along the seam to get it nice and smooth. And this will also show you where you have any bubbling or any issues that you might need to go back in and just trim. But I'm just gonna see what it looks like. So I'm gonna clip along the midpoint on the straight edge. And if you have a stabilizer for your flap, you can go ahead and stick it in now. You can put it into the stabilizer now if you want to. So I'm just going to focus on the straight edge a bit first. And you can see as I'm going over here, then I'll just kind of pull the zipper tape away and just flatten the seam with my fingers. Sometimes it looks a little bubbly, but if you kind of mess with it a bit, it'll smooth out. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. There we go. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along the smooth edge by the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to still use my zipper foot for this, and then I'm going to baste along the straight edge also at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just take your time here, but it is flat, so you shouldn't have any issues with top stitching here. Okay, you can set the flap to the side for just a moment. Now we're going to work on the base, and I'm going to attach my base stabilizer to my exterior. Like I said, it is optional, but I like it. So I'm going to use my little tool here to just kind of help me mark a couple of spots so it's easier for me to know where my base goes. When I cut out my base, I know that I cut it out so that it was 3/8 of an inch smaller on all the edges than the exterior. So that's just kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm just going around marking 3/8 of an inch in different spots. All right, and once I have those marks, then I'll grab my stabilizer, and I have a sticky one. So if you have a fusible one, you can fuse that on, or if you have a non-fusible one, you can honestly just insert it in here as you're sewing, and it doesn't have to be sewn into anything. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna look at it from the front and make sure everything looks good. Move stuff around as necessary. Now this is not a piece of the bag that's supposed to be, it's supposed to stay flat. So this is the bottom of the bag, it should stay flat. So if you're like, well, when it does this, it looks all wrinkly. Well, it's not supposed to do that, it's supposed to stay flat. So take your exterior and your lining base pieces and lay them wrong sides together, right sides out on both sides, and clip together along all the edges. Your stabilizer should be sandwiched in between, whether you adhered it with glue or fused it with an iron, or if it's just on its own and you just stuck it in there, make sure it's in there. All right, once you have all these clipped together, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and just baste along all the edges of the base here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now let's attach the base to the main panel. So if you haven't already, mark the midpoint on the bottom of your main panel, and also mark the midpoint on the straight edge and the curved edge of your base panel. So now with your main front panel right side up, take your base panel and lay it exterior right side down. So the exteriors are right sides together, and then match up the midpoint on the curve with the midpoint on the bottom of your front panel, and then pull the bottom left corner of your front panel up to meet the left corner of the base panel. And you might have to start twisting things. Remember, this is not going to stay flat, so twist away. So I find I have to add a couple clips at each point or else it pulls away from it. So I'm just gonna carefully add clips. Do the same thing on the other corner, just lifting that front panel up to meet the corner of the base. And then once you have these in place, you can start clipping along the curved edge. And just like with the zipper, you really shouldn't find any pleating. You shouldn't find that you need to cut into anything to get it to spread out. It really does just fit perfectly together. Just take your time clipping these together. Okay, so this is what it should look like. See on the inside? It's gonna be such a pretty bag. So here we go. So now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna baste along this curved clipped edge at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do like to backstitch at the beginning and the end of this basting stitch as well. All right, so now we're gonna bind that edge that we just basted. So grab your binding tape and you're going to, if you're using the pre-made tape like I am, just fold along the midpoint. So this just makes it so much easier to attach to the bag if you pre-fold the midpoint, because then you just hug it around that seam and then it's easy. Okay, so then we're gonna take our tape and you can have it overhang the start and this end by a bit, and we're just gonna hug it and clip it. Hug it and clip it. So this is what it should look like once you have the binding clipped in place. And now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The pattern suggests you sew with the front panel exterior facing up. So that would mean the lining side of the base is face up, and just sew along this clipped edge carefully at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and the end. I do like to use a zipper foot for this step. Once you have that stitched on, trim off the end of your binding. And if you're using a water-resistant canvas binding like I am, or even a nylon elastic binding, you can use a lighter and just singe off the ends of the material so it doesn't fray. And now let's have a fun moment and let's look at how beautiful this is. Oh my goodness, just take some time to really push out that edge and smooth it out. Oh my word. How pretty is that, right? And this is the inside. Here's the base. I love these colors so much. They're so pretty. Okay, so now we're gonna attach the flap using the zipper. So I have my zipper and I have my flap. And I'm going to line up the edges here. And I'm just going to make sure that the coils match up perfectly. And I'm gonna insert my zipper pull onto my zipper tape and just pull it down like that. And I'm gonna insert it all the way once and pull it off just to make sure it looks right. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Okay, and so by doing it once, I'm ensuring my zipper is completely closed, which is what I want. And now I'm just going to reinsert the zipper pull to attach the zipper. Pull to the zipper. It's a lot of zipper words. Okay, so once I reattach the zipper now, you can see it's closed on both the left and the right of the zipper pull, which is what I want. Oh my goodness, I love my little tag over here and the little mesh pocket. It's all just so cute. Okay, let's just put this to the side for just a moment. Okay, so now you're gonna grab your 2 exterior flaps and 2 lining flaps, okay? And we want them opposite one another, just like this, all right? This is what we want. Don't worry about this so much, but whenever you're looking at this bag, start thinking about how this is gonna come together, right? So the flat end, the long straight end, is gonna go against the bag like this, and the curvy angled end is gonna go away from it. So just start visualizing that for now. And then let's flip this to the lining side. And I haven't trimmed my zipper tape down yet. You can if you want. Maybe I should. Yeah, I'll do it. I'm gonna trim down my zipper tape just so it's all one size, because it can get a little confusing otherwise. And then once you trim down your zipper tape, make sure you grab a lighter and you melt the ends of that zipper tape so it doesn't fray. Okay, so looking at the lining side, I'm gonna grab a ruler and I'm looking at the flap. So I'm looking right where the zipper is, above the zipper on the lining flap edge. I'm gonna measure 3/8 of an inch from that seam. So from the fold over at the seam, I'm measuring 3/8 of an inch up, and I'm gonna mark right along the edge of my material. I'm gonna do this on both sides. So 3/8 of an inch up from where the lining folds up and away from the zipper tape, and just mark right on the seam. There we go. So now I'm gonna start with the lining panel. So I'm gonna take a lining panel, I'm gonna lay it right side down. So if I'm over here on the left, my flap, when the lining is right side down, the straight edge is on the left. And I'm gonna start with the top corner of this flap, and I'm gonna line it up with that 3/8 of an inch mark, and I'm going to clip it together. Now, you can see how it's kind of a bowl right now. We don't want it to be a bowl. We want the side to be straight. So as we straighten this out, you'll notice that the top corner of this flap is going to have to stick over the edge. You see that? By about 3/16 of an inch, so a little more than 1/4 of an inch. That's okay. So when we straighten all this out, it's going to stick out a bit on the top. See? And that's fine. So then go along the edge here and clip this lining flap right side together with the lining main panel, keeping it nice and straight along the straight edge. And then once you get down to the binding on the bottom here where the base and the front panel are bound together, I like to push the binding up towards the main panel, and then I'm just going to clip the flap over that. There we go. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, so I'll walk you through it again. I have my other lining panel, and I'm gonna lay it right side down. And this time, the straight edge is gonna be on the right, and I'm gonna take the top right corner, and I'm gonna clip it where my 3/8 of an inch mark is. And again, it's gonna overhang by just a bit. Okay, you'll figure out how much more it needs once you straighten out the side. So then I'm going to come over here and straighten out the side of my front panel and pull my flap in to be straight with that front panel. And as you do that, you'll notice that your flap over here on the top corner, it's gonna kind of start pulling away from the main flap. We have too many flaps, huh? We have side flaps and top flap. It just needs to overhang a bit. Don't be too precise with this. The goal here is that the straight edge of the side flap for the lining is straight with the straight edge for the side of the main panel. And once again, I'm gonna kind of pull that binding edge so that it's facing up towards the front panel and not towards the base panel. Okay, so now we're gonna go and we're gonna baste along these clipped edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're gonna go over the top where the 3/8 of an inch marks are on your top flap. You're gonna go over that. But once you get down to the bounded bottoms, you're gonna stop once you get to the binding. So you don't have to go over the binding. So do this for both sides, and if you feel more comfortable, you can backstitch at the beginning and the end as well. Okay, so see, this is what it should look like now. If you pulled it away, it would look like that. Okay, so now we're gonna repeat that with the exterior side. So we can just kind of push the exterior away. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take on the left sides with my exterior facing up, I'm gonna take the left flap. So when the flap is right side down, the left edge is going to be totally straight. And I'm just gonna line that up with my lining. You can measure the 3/8 of an inch again and do it just like you did before, but I'm honestly just gonna line this right up with the lining flap that's already attached. And just clip to the side here. And then I'm gonna grab the other exterior panel, I'm gonna do the same thing. Now remember, exteriors are right sides together. So the main body is sandwiched in between the lining and the exterior flaps, the side flaps. Okay, once you have this attached, you're gonna flip this over and you're gonna sew it with the lining side up. So make sure that the exterior flap doesn't slip out of the way, but you're gonna sew with the lining side up at a 1/4 inch seam allowance right where you stitched previously. So where you stopped on the bottom by the binding, you're gonna stop there as well. But this time make sure you do it as a 1/4 inch. I prefer a zipper foot for this, and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Do this for both sides. Alrighty. Now you can go and trim off those top corners that overhang. There we go. And then you can trim off whatever bottom is overhanging as well. So I just kind of pull up these bottom corners of the side flaps and just trim right where the stitching starts and stops. So do this for both lining and exterior on both sides. Okay, so now you're going to pull the lining and the exterior flaps out, wrong sides together, right sides out. See? And now you've created that beautiful fanny pack look. So line up all the raw edges and clip together. And do your best to match up the corners and really pull it away from the bottom here. This seam down here can get kind of bulky, so be careful. Just do your best to move everything out of the way. And this is, you know, if you were going to make this with vinyl, this is where it would start getting pretty difficult, is that bottom corner. Vinyl is going to get real thick down there. So that's where you're going to want to make sure you have a powerful enough needle and a powerful enough machine. But with the bonded nylon, you really shouldn't have any problems. You might have to up your needle at some point to like a jeans needle or a 90-14, but I find the 80-12 worked pretty well. I didn't really have any problems. So this is what it looks like now. So now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along the seam on the side flap side at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you're gonna base stitch along all the raw edges of the side flaps at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And this is gonna hold the lining and the exterior together. Do this for both sides, and I do recommend a zipper foot for this. Alrighty, let's just flip this out real quick. So now you have like half of the bag done. So you get a really good look at what you made. How pretty is that? It's so pretty. And the size is so nice. I don't feel like it's that much bigger than the small. Okay, you can set this to the side for just a little bit. So now let's work on the back panel. So you're gonna need your back panel exterior and your 2 D1 lining pieces. And you will also need your zipper tape and zipper pull. So for this one, you can go ahead and attach your zipper pull now. Okay, so grab one of your lining zipper panels and lay it right side up. And grab your zipper and lay your zipper right side up. And when the zipper closes, it should be closing towards the right. So it goes to the right when it closes, goes to the left when it opens. And line up the top edges of both these pieces and clip together. Remember, they're both right sides up. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're just gonna baste along this top clipped edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now grab your exterior main panel and find the midpoint along the opening on that top edge. So where that little opening is, just press. And I'm gonna use scissors to mark the midpoint. And then find the midpoint on the top edge of your zipper panel as well. And if your zipper extends past the lining, just make sure you're using the lining edges to find the midpoint, not the zipper edges. And I'm gonna mark where that is. And now take your back panel and lay it right side up, and take your panel with the zipper attached and lay it right side down. So zipper's right side down. And match up those 2 midpoint marks. And you can just clip these together, right sides together. We're focused on that inner rectangle edge here. Now, grab a ruler and you're going to mark 3/8 of an inch outside of this top box on the lining panel. So we wanna extend 3/8 of an inch past it. So you're gonna do this on both sides. I have my little marks, 3/8 of an inch. And now here's the thing. When I sewed this previously, my zipper tape was too high. And the pattern does explain what to do if after you sew this, your zipper tape extends above the top of this when you flip it up. And I did find that to be the case. But I did find that if I sewed along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance for my zipper tape, it lined up perfectly. And my zipper tape is 1 1/4 inch wide, which is what the pattern suggests. So I'm going to sew along this clipped edge from marked point to marked point. So remember, these extend beyond 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end, and then I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to clip into one side here to show you. Okay, and when you clip into this, you don't have to clip through the zipper tape and the lining. Only clip through the exterior. So lift up the exterior material, just like this, and from that inner corner here, you're gonna cut a diagonal towards the end of your stitching. So just like that, and only on the exterior. So let me show you. This is just an example. When we flip this up, we're gonna pull up that exterior material. And when we flatten this all down, what we're trying to do is create a little pretty box here. You see how my zipper tape extends quite a bit above the top of my material? Now, that's fine. You can keep that, and the pattern does tell you what you can do later to help with that. Another option is to just increase the seam allowance to a 3/8 inch seam allowance, because then what happens is this all moves up by just a bit, and then I found that it did line up with the top of the zipper. So it's totally up to you. I wish I knew which one you guys would want to see. I did the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance previously when I was practicing this, and it worked out just fine. I think for this one, I'll leave it at the 1/4 inch seam allowance just for practice to see how to do that. So I'm gonna go back to the back side here. And on the other corner that I didn't clip, again, you don't have to clip into the zipper in the lining, just the exterior. So from that corner in our little boxed bit, I'm gonna cut a diagonal to the edge of our stitching, just like that. So now we can take the zipper panel and the exterior panel and lay them wrong sides together. And you'll see that if you pull the flap bit out over here on the side, you'd have a raw edge, so you want to tuck that in. So as you do this, what you can do is you can actually pull the side of the back panel up and fold it just like that so that you can hold it in place. And so I'm going to grab a clip to hold that like that. I'm going to do the same thing on their side, flipping the side, right sides together with the back panel to straighten it out and really get in there. Do your best to get everything nice and straight and lined up. And again, my zipper is extending quite a bit above the back panel, but that's okay. The pattern does tell you what to do about that later. So there we go. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine and using a zipper foot, I'm just going to sew right along this edge. So this is going to be about 3/8 of an inch in from the raw edge of this little fold over, just over that little cutout. So not all the way down or anything, just over the little cutout over the zipper tape. Do this on both sides and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so now when you flip the sides open, this is how it should look. Isn't that pretty? So just give it a good press right along all the seams that are around the zipper. I love my little castles. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along the sides and the bottom edge around the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Isn't that pretty? That's so pretty. And you can see it still extends beyond the top. That's okay. So if you haven't already, grab your lighter and let's just melt down the edges of our zipper tape. So now take this back panel and flip it so it's wrong side up, lining side up. Grab your remaining zipper lining panel and lay it right side down and match up the top edge. It's not gonna line up with the other panel, it's not supposed to. Just line up the top edge with the top edge of your zipper. And so I just clipped along that edge and I'm gonna flip this over and we're gonna go to the sewing machine and only on the zipper tape, so only between the two sides of the opening, based along this top edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold that lining panel in place. Now flip this over and you should notice that the bottom lining panel, so not the exterior, the bottom lining panel extends farther than the top lining panel. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna kind of hold this in place and cut the bottom lining panel so it's the same shape and size as the top. And this does not have to look pretty. No one's gonna see this. You just need to have it about the same. So really it should just be the angles and the very bottom edge that you have to trim. There we go. So now let's clip these two lining panels together, just like this. And now flip it so that you're looking at the right side of the exterior and you're gonna move the exterior panel out of the way while you sew this. And we're gonna sew along all the edges, the sides and the bottom, all at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. You don't have to sew along the top long edge of the zipper because you've already done that, just the sides and the bottom. Nice big seam allowance. All right, once you have that sewn, we're just gonna trim this seam allowance down. You can pretty much just trim it in half or about 1/4 of an inch or so away from the stitching. I'm just eyeballing it. If you trim down the zipper tape though, make sure you melt along the raw edges so it doesn't fray. Okay, so if you have a stabilizer you want to add, you can go ahead and do it now. Otherwise, set this to the side. All right, so now we're gonna work on that lining zipper pocket. So you're gonna need pattern piece E and pattern piece E1 and your remaining zipper. This is zipper Z4. Okay, so on the wrong side of pattern piece E1, you're gonna measure down 1 1/8 inch and draw a horizontal line. And then I measured down another 1/2 inch below that and drew another horizontal line. And I decided to make my pocket here 6.5 inches wide. So I just measured from the midpoint over to the one side, 3.25 inch, over to the other side, 3.25 inch. Essentially what I want is a 1/2 inch tall, 6.5 inch wide rectangle centered on the back of my E1 cut. So once you have that there, you're gonna grab your lining piece, which is pattern piece E, and lay it right side up, and then take pattern piece E1 and lay it right side down, matching the top edges together. So they're pretty much the same size, it's just the pattern piece E is a little bit shorter than E1. So just line up all 4 edges, and you don't have to use a lot of clips. We just wanna make sure that it's not all wonky and all over the place. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along the long edges of this rectangle. So not all the way to the sides, only as long as the rectangle is. So for me, I decided 6.5 inches. So starting at one corner, I'm just gonna stitch along one long edge, and then I'm gonna stitch along the other long edge, not the short edges. I like to use a 2mm stitch length for this and backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, once you have those lines stitched, then you can draw a midpoint line going right along the center between those two lines. So for me, that's 1/4 inch up from either one of them. And then you can make little triangles going from the corner of your box down to meet that midpoint line. I like to go in from the edge about 1/2 inch. So if you want to measure 1/2 inch in and then do your diagonal, you can do that. And then I'm going to grab my seam ripper and I'm going to rip right along that line to get a cut started. And then I'll move over to my scissors and I'll cut right along that middle line until I get to the tip of a triangle. And then I will just follow along the diagonal until I get right to the stitching, but I'm not cutting my stitching, okay? You're just getting the scissors literally right up to it. The blunt tip of your scissors should touch the thread of your stitching. Now, take your longer piece, your E1 cut, and shove it through that hole. And pull these two lining panels wrong sides together. This probably would have been better if I used 2 different colors so you can see it, but wrong sides together. So now I'm using water resistant canvas, so I'm just gonna press this with my fingers. You could press this with an iron if you'd like, because we really want to get those seams nice and flat. And depending on your material, that can be hard to do, but I think I'll be okay. I'm not sure. One thing I can do along this top edge here actually is I can just use some clips to hold it together, and that will really help out since they are reach the same spot. All right, so just take some time here, really press it either with an iron or your fingers or whatever you want. There we go. So now we're gonna install the zipper. So let's grab our zipper and some double-sided tape. And I'm gonna add double-sided tape right along the very, very outer edge on both long sides. So when the zipper closes, it should be closing towards the left. So lay your zipper right side up, zipper closes towards the left, and then take the paper off the top edge of your zipper tape, and then take your lining unit, so the shorter side. See how, move this. So you see the shorter lining piece right here on the top? That's gonna be on the top. Lay it right side up over the right side of your zipper and center it. So just lift up the sides and make sure it overhangs the same amount on both the left and the right. That's good enough. And then make sure the zipper coils are centered in that window. And then just press along that top edge. Move the zipper pull up. And then you can fold up your material and take the paper off the bottom edge of your zipper tape on that double-sided tape, and then fold all the material back down and press it in place. There we go. Okay, so this is what it should look like now. It's supposed to get cute. So now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're just gonna top stitch along all 4 edges of this opening, just outside of it at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Use a zipper foot for this and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Alrighty, this is coming along so nice. So this is the right side. Flip this over so you're looking at the back of the zipper, okay? Now take this bottom piece here, this big, longer lining piece, and fold it up so it's right sides together with the top edge, all right? And pull the 2 lining panels away from each other. So you can see right along the zipper here, I'm pulling the 2 lining panels away so that I can fold the longer lining panel, the E1 panel, in half and clip along those edges, just like this. So the main lining panel is the E panel here, right? And the E1 panel is the zipper pocket panel. So I'm gonna fold along this edge. All I'm concerned about right now is the E1 panel. I don't wanna mess with the main lining panel at all. So I'm folding along the edges and clipping this right sides together. And so now flip this back so you're looking at the right side of the main lining panel, and you're gonna scrunch this main lining panel out of the way around all the edges. Get it all out of the way like this. So you can look at the sides and the top, and we're going to stitch along the sides and the top edge at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Use a zipper foot here, and again, just make sure you don't include that main lining panel anywhere. We're only worried about the zipper pocket panel. All right, once you have that sewn up, now let's trim that seam allowance down. I'm gonna trim it down to like a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just gonna go around the edge. Remember, again, we're not trimming the main lining panel, only that zipper pocket panel. I should have used a different color. I just don't want to confuse anybody. Okay, so now we're gonna add the slip pocket. We're not doing the card slot pockets, just the slip pocket. So with your lining panel right side up and the zipper on the top, just like this, grab your slip pocket and lay it right side down. So it's gonna be right sides together with the main lining panel, and we're worried about the bottom edge, so not the side that has that zipper, okay? And then just clip along this bottom short edge here. Remember, these two lining pockets are right sides together. And now let's sew along this bottom clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance and backstitch at the beginning and the end. So once you have that sewn, grab your scissors and trim the corners at a 45-degree angle. And now flip this so you're looking at the wrong side of that lining panel and the zipper portion's on the bottom. And you're gonna flip that slip pocket up, press along the seam, and flip it back, just like this. So do your best to get everything nice and flat. If you wanna grab an iron here, go ahead and do that and give this a good press. I'm gonna use some clips to help straighten this and flatten it. Okay, so now with this lining panel wrong side up, so the slip pocket is right side up, but the main lining panel is wrong side up. Keep it this direction. Take it to the sewing machine and top stitch along this clipped folded edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, so now flip this back over so you're looking at the right side of your zipper, and you're going to pull that top stitched edge up just like this. So now that edge you just top stitched, that nice folded edge, is going to come right below your zipper. The height for this is going to be in the pattern. So what you want to do is you kind of want to move this up and down to adjust it. I suggest laying a ruler right next to the side and just making sure the top and the bottom edges hit the right points so it's the height that the pattern says. All right, once you have it the right height, take it to the sewing machine and baste along the sides where the folds are at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold it in this size and shape. All right, the last step for this is adding our little wings. So grab your two lining side wings and you're going to lay them right sides together. So of course, make sure that the straight edges go with the straight edges on the side. And when you do this, measure from the top. So don't worry so much about the bottom corners. You just want to make sure the top corners match up with this lining panel. And clip along the sides. And if the bottom corner point hangs off, that's fine, it should. So do this for both sides. And now let's sew along these two clipped edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Once you have these sewn, on the top corners, go ahead and trim the corners at a 45-degree angle. And then on the bottom corner, you can do the same. Just also trimming off that little dog ear extra. And then press the flaps, or the wings. They're called wings, not flaps, Jessica. Press the wings out and away from that center panel, and let's top stitch along the wing side of the seam at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides, back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, there you are. There's your back lining panel. Isn't that cute? I love it. It's so clever. Everything about this pattern is so stinking clever. Okay, so let's finish up the back panel. Grab your exterior back panel and your lining back panel, and let's lay them wrong sides together. If your zipper overextends like mine does, that's fine. I'm gonna mark the midpoint along the top edge of this back panel. And then I'm also gonna find the midpoint on the top edge of my lining panel, because they're not gonna probably be the exact same size, and that's okay. So I wanna show you this. So using those midpoint marks, I'm gonna line up the top edge. And if you also wanna mark the midpoints on the bottom, you can. I'm not gonna. But I'm gonna use those two midpoint marks to line up the top edge first. And when I do this, I think I wanna have my zipper still overhang. So my zipper is about an 1/8 of an inch high. So I'm gonna keep it like that. And if you wanna make sure you can easily do that on the back, grab a ruler and measure an 1/8 of an inch in from the side where the zipper is overextending and just draw a line. Okay, so yeah, it really is just an 1/8 of an inch taller. So if you would have sewn this on, back when we did this bottom seam, if you would have sewn that on at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, you wouldn't have any overhang at all. But anyways, back to what we're doing. We're gonna take the 2 panels, lay them wrong sides together. So when I'm looking at the back here, I'm gonna line up the top edge of my lining with that 1/8 of an inch mark. So that way my wings will line up. So just use your eyeballs here to put these together. But I just want to show you that, you know, if you find yourself in a predicament like this and you're like, it's not how it's supposed to look, it's okay. It's still gonna turn out perfect. You're fine. I'm gonna flip this over and look over on this side. So you can see on this side here how my lining extends a lot farther than my exterior. That's fine. That's just because of how I sewed on this other flap side. And that is okay, because we can trim down the lining to make it the same size as the exterior. So I'm not worried about that at all. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm gonna baste along all edges of my exterior panel at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold the exterior and the lining wrong sides together and in place. And again, use the exterior side as your guide, not the lining side. Okay, now if you have any overhang like I do, you can trim it down. Okay, set this to the side for just a moment. So now I'm gonna build my side connectors. On the wrong side of my side connector, I drew a midpoint line going along the long edge. And I'm gonna fold the 2 long raw edges back, wrong sides together to meet that midpoint line. You can use tape here or an iron or just clips if you like, whatever's easiest. It's a small piece, so you don't need to use a whole lot. Honestly, most of them I don't even use clips. I just do it at the machine. If you want to add any interfacing to this or any Decoville light to keep this a little bit more sturdy, you definitely can. Water-resistant canvas is pretty sturdy on its own, so I don't really worry about it ripping, but adding a thin layer of Decoville light right along the center is always a good idea. So now I'm going to flip this to the right side, and I'm going to top stitch along all 4 edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now you can take this unit and fold it in half, short sides together, and just slide your scissors in there and cut it. So now you have 2 of them. And then grab your 2 D-rings and you can thread these around your D-rings and add a clip. Now we're gonna go to the sewing machine, and you can just base stitch along the 2 bottom edges if you'd like, but I think I'm actually gonna top stitch around the bottom of the D-ring too. So I'm just gonna do a little box where I use my zipper foot to get as close as I can underneath that D-ring bar, and then I'm just gonna go back over the 1/8 of an inch top stitching and also over the short raw edges on both of these tabs, just to really secure this and make it a little bit stronger. Okay, so now grab your back panel and your D-rings and a ruler and measure 3/4 of an inch down from the top edge on the side seam and make a mark in the seam allowance. So 3/4 of an inch on both sides on those little, like the wings part. And then grab your little D-rings and align the top edge of your D-ring with that mark and clip in place. Do this for both sides, and the D-ring should be facing in towards the center of the panel. All right, once you're happy with where those are, just baste along the sides of the D-rings on each side at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, here we go. It's just time to put it together. You should just have 2 pieces now, your front panel and your back panel. Okay, so flip your front panel so it's the exterior is tucked in, and make sure you open your zipper halfway. And lay your front panel right side down over your back panel. And let's focus on the top edge first. If your zipper extends like mine does, you're gonna wanna mark that 1/8 of an inch line, or just whatever line. You just connect these 2 top corners of your back panel with a ruler and mark a line going along the zipper tape. And that line is going to be the fake top edge of our panel, okay? So that's what we're gonna use to line everything up. So I'm just going to use my midpoints on my back panel and also on the straight side of my front flap. And I'm gonna line these up right sides together and clip along this top edge. And then I'm gonna go all the way to the corner and attach the corners of the wings together. Do this for both sides. Just whatever hardware you have, make sure it stays out of your way. And then just work on this top edge, clipping it right sides together. Okay, so I'm only gonna focus on the top edge for now. I'm not gonna do the sides and the bottom just yet. I'm gonna kind of faux check and make sure everything lines up, that none of my angles are weird. But I think we're good. So just starting with the top edge, I'm gonna use like a top stitching length at a 3/16 of an inch. So just over a 1/4 of an inch, just a little bit bigger than a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, only along this top straight edge. Make sure you're using the top edge of your flap as the line that you're measuring against if your zipper's overhanging like mine is. And then I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning and the end. Use a zipper foot here and just go nice and slow. A stiletto is also helpful. Okay, I'll be honest, the most tricky bits of this are gonna be the seams right here where the top flap comes together. So when you flip this out, take a look at that because it can get pretty aggressive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go over this seam one more time, specifically at that juncture, and you can feel it, it's kind of thick there. But where all these different layers come together, you have like 3 pieces all meeting in one spot. I'm gonna go over that spot just 1 or 2 more times to really reinforce the stitching there because that's where you're gonna have the most pressure too, and that's where you can see the stitching. So I'm gonna just use a regular stitch length of 2.5 millimeters and go over that one more time. Once you're happy with that, now let's deal with the rest of the bag. So I'm just gonna go around clipping these edges together and everything should line up pretty perfectly. Make sure these corners line up. So once you have it all clipped together on the sides and the bottom, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch around all of this just over a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The pattern suggests a baste. I'm gonna use just a regular stitch just because I'm afraid that my stitches will be seen in the end. So I'm gonna stitch around all of this from the sides and the bottom. The top is already sewn at a just bit bigger than 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, there you go. You might have noticed that the binding down here, going over the binding is a little tricky. It's a little thick. I fold the binding kind of up towards the side, the wings, but it's just a little bulky. So now we're going to attach binding to that entire outer edge that we just sewed. So I'm going to pre-fold my binding just like I've been doing in the other steps. And you can attach the binding as you go at the machine, which is what the pattern suggests, or you can pre-attach it. I'm gonna pre-attach it just so you can see how I do the corners and everything. But the binding step is a lot easier than you think it's gonna be. So if you are hesitant to do this, just trust me, you got this. Okay, so I'm gonna start on the top edge over here because I feel like that's the least noticeable spot. And since I pre-folded it, I'm just gonna hug it around that edge. And even with my zipper that is extending a little bit farther than it's supposed to, I can still completely cover the stitching. And that's the point of the binding. You see all these basting stitches and threads and mess. We don't want that seen in the end. That's not pretty. So the binding is it just covers it up. Instead of having to figure out how to make it not look like that anymore, you just cover it up. So once I get to the corners, I'm just gonna fold the binding down and then clip along the side here, not worrying so much about the corner. And then on one side, I'm just gonna fold the binding one way and then fold the corner the other way. And I'm trying to get like a little 45-degree angle. So once I have it on one side, I can flip this over and I can do the same thing on the other side. And you just kind of manipulate it, and once you're happy with the angles on that corner and you are certain that it's completely wrapped around the corner, you add a clip to hold in place. And then same thing on these corners of the wings. Just wrap past the corner and then go back and deal with the corner. So once you go past the corner, then you can kind of go back here and just pinch it. These corners are not that sharp, so you can honestly just kind of pinch them a bit. And the 1 inch wide binding should be plenty to go over these really thick seams. So like where the binding is on this base panel, you should still be able to cover everything. So I'm just going to continue going around the entire outer edge of my bag, just wrapping and clipping the binding over those raw edges. And then once you get back to where you started, I let the binding overhang by about 1 inch. And then I just wrap it around the beginning. You see, I don't fold it or anything. I just wrap it around. And there you go. It's very, very simple. So now we're gonna sew the binding in place at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm gonna probably use a top stitching stitch length for this. Just go slow, use your zipper foot. I like to have it so that like the big mess is facing up versus like this. I think it's gonna be easier to have all this and have the flat side on the bottom. Just take your time and back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, you ready? Moment of truth. Let's turn it out and see how it looks. So when you turn out the wings, that's probably the hardest spot to turn out. So just be gentle with those. Take your time. These colors are everything. Oh my goodness. And the binding on this is one big reason why this bag has such great structure, but it's also gonna be what fights you the most until you get it where you want it. Now, it will go where you want it. You just have to have some patience and the right tools. Okay, with all bags like this, you gotta take some time to pinch the corners. The pattern even suggests that you use some clips on some of these seams, and that's the trick. A lot of times people are like, oh, it doesn't look as crisp as I wanted it to look. It's because you have to give the bag time to settle into the shape you want it into. And so you have to let the bag know what shape you want it to be in. So you just put some clips on it, push out those seams very firmly with your fingers. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. Wow, it's another one of those. I cannot believe I just made this bags. And it's so structured. The shape is so good, but it's still light and loose enough to wear all the time. I don't feel like I'm wearing a cardboard box, you know? Wow, that is gorgeous. Okay, let's quickly make the crossbody strap and then you're done. Okay, so I chose to cut my webbing 50 inches long, which is pretty long if I wanted to wear this just as a fanny pack, but I'm thinking this is like a really cool looking crossbody bag. That's the shape that I am like really loving with this bag. So I made my strap 50 inches long, which is more of like a crossbody length strap. I just burned the webbing so that the webbing doesn't fray. So I'm going to take my webbing and I'm going to insert it from the bottom over the top of that middle bar on my slider. Then I'm going to fold the edge of my webbing down by about 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to fold it down again by about an inch or so away from that middle bar. So it's double folded, no raw edges. And then I'm going to grab my hole punch and I'm just going to punch a hole through those 3 layers, right? Folded and wrapped around. And then I'm going to grab a rivet and pop it in that hole. And there we go. So much easier than sewing. So much easier than sewing. Okay, so keeping my webbing so that the folded over edge right here is facing up, keeping my webbing nice and straight, I'm going to take a swivel hook and I'm going to insert it so it's hook side down, thread it on. Again, keep your webbing straight. And then with the raw edge of your webbing, it goes up from the side that has the fold over, from the bottom up over that middle bar and out the other end. So this is what you should have now. You should have your hook on here, your slider in the center, and then the raw edge over here. Put your other hook on so that the hook is facing up. And then once again, fold the raw edge down by about 3/4 of an inch and fold it over again, just like this, so it's all tucked in. Grab your hole punch, punch a hole through all 3 layers. Grab your rivet, insert the rivet in there and snap it shut. Then grab your rivet press and press this down. And the nice thing about the rivet press is that it requires virtually no effort. So if you have dexterity issues, if you have strength issues, this is a great tool because it's very easy. Okay, and that's it. Now I'm just going to take my strap and put it on my awesome little bag. Oh my gosh, I love this thing so much. Okay, how stinking cute is that? All right, I can't wait to try this on. I hope you guys love making this as much as I do. It is my favorite fanny pack pattern. You guys are gonna love this. I can't wait for you to make it. All right, guys, what do you think? This is so cute. So here's the comparison. Here's the small and here's the medium. The pink one is the medium. See, they're not terribly different in size, but the medium is bigger, right? It is bigger. It does kind of pooch out more. See, look at from the top there. There you go. It is a bigger bag. So this is great just for if you don't have a lot to carry, you're traveling, you're at the theme parks, you're whatever. This is great if you're just like, this is an everyday bag. Like, I'm a crossbody purse wearer, but I want it as a fanny pack, and I need an everyday bag. This is a great everyday bag. Going to the grocery stores, doing everything, college. Oh my gosh, I love this bag so stinking much. And it's so much fun to make. It all comes together beautifully. I hope that my tips were helpful. I hope I encouraged you to make this because I love it so much. So I hope you enjoyed sewing with me today. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them down in the comment section down below. If you make this and you post it on social media, please make sure you tag me. Also make sure you tag Sophisticated Craft Designs. I love seeing your version so much. This is a bag I can make 1,000 times. I really could. I could make this bag over and over and over again. And I can't say that about a whole lot of bags, honestly. Like, there are some bags I'm like, I'm glad I'm done with that. This is not one of them. This is one that I have kept the pattern pieces, tucked them away. I'll be making more of these. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.